10 surreal spots in Malaysia you won't believe exist. What if I told you there are places in Malaysia so unreal, so genuinely jaw-dropping, that even people who've lived there their whole lives sometimes stop and ask themselves, is this actually Earth? Not a painting, not a movie set, not a dream. Real places. Places with coordinates, with names, with people standing in them right now, completely stunned. Most people who travel to Malaysia spend their time at the Petronas Towers or Penang street food stalls. And look, those are incredible. But they are scratching the surface of a country that holds some of the most surreal, most mind-bending landscapes on this entire planet. Today, we're going through all 10 of them. From glowing rivers to underground worlds large enough to swallow aircraft. From forests where explorers go missing to mountains that shake the ground beneath your feet. By the time we hit number 1, I promise you, your jaw will be on the floor. But wait, before we begin, please subscribe so you never miss out on any of my essential content. Comment, I subscribe, below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. We're counting down from 10 to 1, least surreal to most surreal. But I'll tell you this right now, even number 10 is going to make you question reality. Starting at number 10. Kampung Kuantan Firefly Sanctuary, Selangor. Picture this. You're sitting in a small wooden boat. It's 11 o'clock at night. There is no moon. The river around you is pitch black. And then, without warning, the trees begin to glow. Not one tree. Not two. Every single tree along both banks of the river lights up in perfect, synchronized pulses of blue-green light. Like someone strung a billion tiny fairy lights through the jungle and set them to a heartbeat. Ahmad was a fisherman on this river for over 40 years. He told a journalist once that the first time he saw the trees glow as a young man, he actually dropped his paddle and sat there, paralyzed, thinking he had gone mad. He hadn't. What he was seeing was one of the most extraordinary natural phenomena in Southeast Asia. Tens of thousands of Pteroptyx tenor fireflies, all flashing in perfect unison. Here's what makes this scientifically mind-blowing. Researchers from Cornell University studied these fireflies and discovered they achieve near-perfect synchronization, not because they're communicating, but because their nervous systems are wired to respond to light the same way musicians in an orchestra respond to a conductor. The river essentially creates a living, breathing light show every single night. But here's what the travel brochures don't tell you. The sanctuary is shrinking. Development along the riverbanks is destroying the barambang trees the fireflies depend on. Scientists warn that if nothing changes in the next decade, this light show, this ancient, impossible, magical thing, could simply stop. Forever. So if this is on your bucket list, don't wait. Coming in at number 9, Gua Temperung, Perak. Most people think of caves as small, enclosed, claustrophobic spaces. Gua Temperung will erase that idea completely and replace it with something much larger and much darker than you're prepared for. This cave system runs for nearly 4 kilometers through a limestone hill in Perak, and inside it, you'll find cathedral chambers with ceilings so high the flashlight beam doesn't reach the top. You'll wade through underground rivers. You'll squeeze through passages barely wide enough for a human body. And then suddenly, the cave opens up into a space so vast and so silent, it doesn't feel like the inside of a mountain. It feels like standing inside a cathedral built by God himself. Sarah is a geography teacher from Kuala Lumpur who visited Gua Temperung on a school trip and ended up crying in the dark. Not from fear, from beauty. She described the moment the guide turned off all the lights and told the group to stand perfectly still. Total darkness. Total silence. Just the sound of underground water somewhere below their feet. She said it was the first time in her adult life she felt truly, completely small. And she meant that as the highest possible compliment. But here's the part that should make your skin crawl, and I mean this literally. The cave is home to millions of cave-dwelling organisms, including a species of huntsman spider with a leg span wider than your hand. They live in the dark, hunt in the dark, and they are perfectly adapted to a world where light has never once existed. If that doesn't make your hair stand up, nothing will. Number 8 on our list, Tasik Kenyir, Terengganu. Tasik Kenyir is the largest man-made lake in Southeast Asia. It spans over 2,000 square kilometers, it's fed by 14 rivers, it holds over 300 islands, and it is staggeringly, heartbreakingly beautiful. Forests drop straight into still water. Waterfalls cascade out of nowhere. Hornbills fly overhead. The silence is absolute. But here is what Tasik Kenyir actually is. In 1985, when the Kenyir Dam was completed, the water rose. And as it rose, it swallowed 14 entire villages. Homes, schools, a 100-year-old temple, cemeteries where people's grandparents were buried. Underwater, forever. There are elderly men and women alive today who watched the water take their childhood home, who stood on a hillside with a bag of belongings and watched the roof of the house where they were born disappear beneath the surface. The lake is beautiful. It is also a graveyard. And on certain days, when the water is still and the light is right, you can look down and see the dark shapes of rooftops beneath the surface. Whole streets. A life that used to exist, preserved in cold, dark water. It is the most haunting thing I've ever heard described. At number 7, Bukit Leret, also known as Maxwell Hill, Para. Most people have never heard of Bukit Leret. That is exactly the point. While tourists flood into Cameron Highlands 45 minutes away, Bukit Leret sits completely untouched, the oldest hill station in all of Malaysia, established during the British colonial era, and to this day one of the wettest places on the entire planet. The mountain receives over 5,000 millimeters of rainfall every single year. To put that in perspective, London, one of the cities most famous for its rain, receives around 600 millimeters annually. Bukit Leret gets more than 8 times that. James and May were a couple from Ipoh who climbed Bukit Leret every single year on their wedding anniversary. For 30 years. They said the mountain looked different every single time. Different mists, different birds, different moments of light breaking through the cloud. On their 30th anniversary, James told May that marrying her was the best decision he'd ever made, second only to climbing this mountain with her the first time. She didn't argue. There is only one road up the mountain, a steep, narrow track open only to government Land Rovers, and access is restricted. You either walk or you wait for a scheduled vehicle. No private cars. No tour buses. Just you, the mist, and a forest so old and so undisturbed that it genuinely feels like stepping back 1,000 years. Number 6, the mossy forest, Cameron Highlands. Here is something nobody tells you about Cameron Highlands. Yes, there are tea plantations. Yes, there are strawberry farms. Yes, there are tourists everywhere. But at the very top of Gunung Brinchang, above the clouds, above the tea gardens, above everything, there is a forest that looks like it was designed by someone who had never seen a real forest and just imagined what the most magical version of one might look like. The mossy forest is cold. It is wet. It is absolutely silent. Every single surface, trees, rocks, fallen branches, the ground itself, is wrapped in thick, luminous green moss. Ferns and pitcher plants grow out of the fog. The trees are twisted and ancient and draped in hanging gardens. Sunlight barely penetrates. When you stand inside it, you feel genuinely unsure whether you're still in the 21st century. Rajan is a botanist who has been studying the mossy forest for over a decade. In 2021, he discovered a species of orchid inside the forest that had not been recorded since the 1960s and was believed to be locally extinct. He described the moment of discovery as the closest I will ever come to time travel. The Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew have documented over 200 species of orchid in this single ecosystem, in a forest the size of a small neighborhood. But here's the devastating part, and I need you to hear this clearly. The mossy forest is disappearing. Tourism infrastructure, illegal logging on the surrounding slopes, and climate change are destroying the delicate ecosystem that makes this forest possible. Scientists project that if the surrounding temperature rises by just 2 degrees Celsius, the cloud cover that feeds the forest could collapse entirely. What took tens of thousands of years to build could be gone within a generation. And now, we're at the halfway point of this countdown, and things are about to get significantly more surreal. But first, if this video is opening your eyes to places you never knew existed, do me a favor right now. Share this with one person who needs to see it. Send it to a friend, Post it to your story, drop it in a group chat. Help me get the word out about these extraordinary places. Thank you. Now, let's get back to it. Number 5, Bata Caves, Selangor. You have probably seen photos of Bata Caves. The golden statue of Lord Murugan at the entrance, 42 meters tall, the tallest statue of a Hindu deity in the world. The 272 rainbow-colored steps leading up into the hillside. The cave entrance, vast and dark, opening like the mouth of something ancient. But here's what the photo doesn't tell you. Those limestone hills are 400 million years old. 400 million. The oldest human buildings on Earth are around 12,000 years old. These caves existed for 399 million years before the first human being was ever born. They were ancient before the dinosaurs. They were ancient before the ocean pulled back to reveal the land they stand on. When you walk into Bata Caves, you are walking into something that has been here for longer than the human mind can actually comprehend. Priya was 17 years old when she climbed the steps barefoot on Thaipusam, the Hindu festival that draws over 1 million pilgrims to the caves every year. She described reaching the top of the stairs after what felt like hours of praying and chanting and heat and crowd, and then stepping into the cave itself, where the air turns cool and the light falls from a hole in the ceiling 300 feet above, illuminating the temple inside like a spotlight placed by God. She stood there and wept. Not sad tears. The kind of tears that come when something is too beautiful and too enormous for your body to process quietly. And here is the thing most tourists never discover. Behind the main cave, through a narrow, unmarked passage, there is a second cave. The Dark Cave. It has been sealed from public access and preserved as a living research site. Inside, scientists have documented over 40 species of invertebrates found nowhere else on Earth. It is a world within a world within a world. And unless you're a researcher, you will never see it. Number 4, Mulu Caves, Surreal. Let me give you a number. 350. That is the length, in kilometers, of surveyed cave passages inside Mulu National Park in Sarawak, Borneo. 350 kilometers. And scientists believe that's only a fraction of what actually exists inside the mountain. Most of it has never been explored by a human being. Most of it never will be. The Sarawak Chamber, the largest single cave chamber on Earth, is so big you could park 40 Boeing 747 aircraft inside it, wing to wing, and still have room left over. The ceiling is so high and so far away that when researchers first tried to measure it, their lights couldn't reach it. It is so dark inside the chamber that your eyes never adjust, because there is genuinely no light for them to adjust to. Not a trace. Not a photon. Complete, absolute, geological darkness. Lee is a professional spelunker, a cave explorer, who has mapped caves on 4 continents. He has been to Mulu 3 times. On his last visit, 3 kilometers into an unexplored passage, he stopped. He sat down on a rock in the dark and said to his partner, "Something doesn't feel right." They couldn't explain it. There was no smell, no sound, no logical reason. They turned around anyway. Lee said he's not a superstitious man. But there are places inside that mountain, he says, that feel like they belong to something else. And now, every evening, as the sun sets over the jungle canopy outside Deer Cave, it begins. First 1 bat, then 100, then 10,000, then a column of 3 million bats spiraling out of the cave mouth in a living helix that stretches a kilometer into the sky. The spiral is so dense, so enormous, that it shows up on meteorological radar. It was documented in the journal Nature in 2017. Watching it in person from a viewing platform in the jungle is reportedly one of the most overwhelming sensory experiences a human being can have. But we're saving the full Deer Cave moment for number 1. Because there's more to it than the bats. Much more. Number 3, Langkawi Sky Bridge. 700 meters. That's how far below your feet the rainforest floor sits when you step onto the Langkawi Sky Bridge. 700 meters, roughly twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. The bridge itself curves in a gentle arc across the peak of Gunung Mat Singkang, suspended by a single steel pylon, stretching 125 meters across a gap that your brain simply refuses to accept as real. Maria flew from Manila to Langkawi specifically to cross this bridge. She told her husband she wasn't afraid of heights. She was wrong. She stepped onto the bridge, felt it sway almost imperceptibly beneath her, looked down through the glass floor at 700 meters of empty air and jungle far below, and her legs simply stopped working. She stood there for 3 full minutes without moving. Then something shifted. She took one step, then another. She crossed the bridge slowly, hands on the railing, breathing deliberately. At the far end, she turned around, and she crossed it again. Not because she had to, but because the second time, she was actually present for it. The first crossing was survival. The second crossing was joy. And directly below the bridge, if you look on the right angle at the right time of day, you can see the twin peaks of Langkawi's ancient rainforest, and beyond them, the blue sweep of the Andaman Sea stretching to the horizon. At number 2, Kinabalu Park, Sabah. Mount Kinabalu stands 4,095 meters above sea level, making it the highest peak in Malaysia and one of the highest in all of Southeast Asia. It is also, by almost any scientific measure, one of the most biologically rich places on this planet. Kinabalu Park contains over 5,000 species of plants. That is more species than exist in the entire continent of Europe. In a national park the size of a medium-sized city. But on the 5th of June, 2015, at 7 in the morning, with dozens of climbers near the summit, the mountain moved. A magnitude 5.9 earthquake sent boulders the size of houses sliding down the ridge. 18 people were killed. Dozens more were stranded overnight at 4,000 meters in cold, dark, violent conditions. Aling is a Kadazandusan guide who has climbed Kinabalu over 200 times. He survived the 2015 earthquake. He was 200 meters below the summit when the ground shook. He led his group down in the dark, over fractured rock, for 7 hours. When asked why he still climbs, every month, even now, he says this: "The mountain didn't stop being sacred because it shook. It became more sacred because it reminded us it's alive." Near the summit of Kinabalu, there is a zone called the Lowe's Peak Circuit, a scramble across bare granite in the freezing pre-dawn darkness. And up there, in that stripped, windswept, otherworldly landscape, something strange happens to the light. In the hour before sunrise, the entire summit turns a shade of purple that doesn't exist at sea level. Climbers describe it as a color they have no word for. Geologists can't fully explain why it happens. Locals have known about it for centuries. They call it the mountain's breath. And finally, number 1. The Deer Cave and Garden of Eden, Mulu. We need to talk about the Deer Cave properly, because the bat exodus at sunset, extraordinary as it is not even the most surreal thing about this place. The entrance to Deer Cave is 107 meters wide and 122 meters tall. For scale, that is large enough to fit a full-sized cathedral inside the opening and still have sky above it. When you walk toward the entrance through the jungle, you hear it before you see it, a low, constant, organic roar, like white noise made of life itself. That is the sound of 3 million bats. Roosting, breathing, existing, all at once. The cave floor is covered in guano over 100 meters deep, and that guano supports an entire ecosystem of insects, snakes, and creatures that exist nowhere else on Earth. But walk through the Deer Cave, through the darkness and the noise and the scale that makes you feel like an insect, and emerge on the far side. And you will step into the Garden of Eden. That is its actual name, given by the explorers who first documented it in 1977. A hidden valley entirely enclosed by limestone cliffs on all sides, completely cut off from the outside world. Sunlight pours down from directly above. The vegetation inside, untouched, unmolested, growing in a cathedral of stone, is so green it looks painted. Waterfalls drop from the cliffs. Birds call from trees that have never been touched by a human hand. The silence, after the roar of the bat cave behind you, is so complete it feels like a physical sensation. The late Sir David Attenborough visited Deer Cave and described it as one of the most extraordinary places he had encountered in a lifetime of exploring the natural world. I think about that. A man who has stood on every continent, in the deepest oceans and the highest mountains. And this place, this cave in Malaysian Borneo, This is the one that stopped him. No human being fully explored the Garden of Eden Valley until the 20th century. There are still sections of the surrounding cave system that no person has entered. There are species inside that have never been named. In the 21st century, in a world where we believe we've seen everything, there are corners of Malaysia where the natural world is still, entirely, its own. Malaysia is not just a destination. It is a series of doorways into versions of Earth that most people don't know still exist. A glowing river, a drowned village, a forest made of moss and silence, a mountain that breathes purple light before dawn, a cave mouth that generates its own weather, and behind all of it, the people. The fisherman who dropped his paddle in wonder, the guide who climbs a grieving mountain every month because love is stronger than fear, the botanist who found a ghost orchid, the woman who crossed a glass bridge twice, once to survive it and once to feel it. These places are real. They are waiting. And now, one final call to action before you go. If this video moved you, if it made you want to pack a bag and get on a plane, the single most important thing you can do right now is share it. Put it somewhere someone else will see it. Because stories about the world's most extraordinary places deserve to be heard by as many people as possible. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. It genuinely means everything. Now here's your question, and I want you to think about this before you answer. If you could visit just one of these 10 places before you die, which would it be? The glowing Firefly River where the trees breathe light? The cave so dark your eyes never adjust? The hidden valley at the end of the world that no human saw until 50 years ago? Or the mountain that turns purple in the dark? Drop your answer in the comments below, and tell me why. Because I have a feeling the answer says something about who you are. And I want to know.